Holy City Center Radio is episode 190, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, November 3rd, 2023. Hello. Another week here in Charleston is in the books. The weekend is here. If you need some events, be sure to go to holycitycenter.com/events, and you can see everything that is going on today, Saturday, Sunday, and any day going forward. I'm a little biased, but I think it's the best events calendar you can find in the Holy City. So head on over there. You can find some events, regardless of the weather. If you want to be inside, you want to be outside, all sorts of things going on. You can always find something to do in town via that calendar. So go check it out. Not much else going on here in Holy City Centerland. I don't have much to report about or share. I haven't really done too much in the way of anything exciting anyway. So I guess let's just get into the news. National Nancy. That is the name that Nancy Mace designated herself, according to some memos that have been obtained by the Daily Beast. And they've got all sorts of great details out of these memos and guidebooks, all about how Representative Nancy Mace is doing exactly what we here in Charleston and South Carolina have known for a long time. But this just puts it into words that she is not very interested in legislating. She is not a serious politician. She is about herself. She is about getting attention. And that's pretty much what all of these documents show. It's a really interesting story. The link, of course, is in the show notes. I'll run down some of the major points here, but none of this should be shocking if you pay any attention to her, especially like her social media accounts and just the shenanigans she's always up to and always inserting herself into whatever, current viral political story there is, in the way she acts on social media and how many times you see her on TV. This kind of gives you an inside look into the exact strategy that she has tried to have her team implement. So a lengthy internal handbook for aides to Nancy Mace were obtained by the Daily Beast, and it demonstrates Mace's extreme thirst for the spotlight. First up, there was a strategy memo that she wrote in 2021 where she described herself as the, capital THE, the freshman thought leader on federal issues. She also even gave herself that brand name I mentioned, National Nancy, obviously showing her sights are not South Carolina specific. She is looking for a bigger platform. This probably relates to why she may be the person who floated and claimed that she is being floated as Trump's VP pick, because no one else seems to know where that originated. So it seems that might be part of this whole brand thing and her efforts to just get herself out there as much as possible. Looking at these documents and the pull quotes and things, it's clear, again, just what we've always said, that not only does she want attention, it doesn't seem that she actually cares what kind of attention she gets, as long as she's at the center of it. So that means anytime she's being made fun of, people, think back to when she was, just what was it, a few weeks ago, where she did that ridiculous stunt where she drew a big red letter A on her white shirt, claiming it's her scarlet letter for voting to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House. And she just got roasted by everyone, pretty much, both sides of the aisle. People in her own party were scoffing at her, not just for her vote, but for her antics. And it seems like, I'm sure people like me are like, look at this ridiculous person who's unserious about being a politician. And she doesn't really care, it seems, as long as people are talking about her and her name is out there. That's what it certainly seems like. So on that 2021 memo, they've since, there's an updated handbook that the Daily Beast apparently got a hold of, and it asks her congressional staff to do all sorts of things, including, to book interviews. So Daily Beast used that strategy memo. They also got the current internal handbook for her congressional staff and interviewed 3 former Mace aides to put together this story. So they have lots of different people confirming, yes, this is her handbook that she gives out to us. Yes, that is true about her. Yes, this is what happened behind the scenes. So it's a pretty well-sourced story. And based on all that, it's clear that from this report, Nancy Mace is very obsessed with her public image. She wants as much exposure as possible. And often she's doing these things to the dismay of her staff. You know, they people who work for politicians, they don't envision this is what their work is like, and it's frustrating for them, at least according to these former aides. One former aide even said something along the lines of, "Are we in a PR firm or working for a member of Congress?" You know, just demonstrating that, hey, shouldn't we be working on legislation? Shouldn't we be doing typical tasks that political and campaign staffs do? We shouldn't be constantly putting your name out there trying to get you TV hits and, you know, viral moments or whatever else. Now, this staff handbook, the aides said that was also written by Mace herself. You know, it wasn't outsourced or anything. So obviously, this is her plan. This is what she wants, and it's very focused on PR and media exposure. In the document, the responsibilities and expected deliverables listed for the position of communications director are quite extensive. So, for instance, that person in that role is expected to send out at least one press release per day, which is ridiculous. I have never heard of a politician who had anything remotely close to that as far as a requirement with press releases. And I will say, I definitely have not gotten that many press releases from her campaign. I don't know if they've cycled me out of their mailing list because I haven't gotten any in a while. But often they're filled with, it's lacking detail. And she's not alone in this, but there's important details missing where they'll say something like, you know, it looks like Nancy Mace had some legislation that was moving forward. And then you find out, well, it wasn't really her legislation. She just signed on as like a co-sponsor, you know, which again, all politicians do. And sometimes will try to take credit for a bill they didn't write and didn't really have any input on. They just were like, hey, I like that. I want to be a co-sponsor. So a lot of times when I was getting these press releases, I'd be like, wow, she really seems to be passing a lot of legislation. And then I would realize, oh, this isn't even her bill. She wasn't really part of it. She just put her name on it. And there's tons of other people who have their name on it. It's not their bill. So again, I'm sure she's not alone with that, but just for a little background, so you guys know how this press release thing can work sometimes, and how much work you journalists or hack bloggers like me have to put into being like, is this actually accurate? Like, is this actually her bill, or did she just like sign her name to it and she's trying to take credit for it? And more often than not, that was the case. All right, so besides the normal thing you would think a communications director does, like sending out press releases, that's not crazy. All politicians will send out press releases, just not at the frequency that Nancy Mace was requiring. You know, they also do things like put up website posts. Sometimes they tweet, although this post does say that Nancy does often, you know, tweet her own, like by herself. She's not running things by a campaign staff member. She's not delegating it all to them. She'll actually put out tweets herself. You can probably tell which ones are from her because they're the most ridiculous and over the top. But in addition to that, anyone on her communications team were directed to book Mace on a national TV outlet between 1 and 3 times per day. That is insane. To have that as a goal is crazy. And to require your staffers to book you 1 to 3 times a day on any national outlet. That explains why she's constantly on TV. And when, you know, a reporter from the Post and Courier asked her about this recently, you know, same with the Scarlet Letter thing, she said, oh, I don't need to do performative politics. I turn down more TV appearances than I accept, and I'm a serious politician. Well, your own words and handbooks are showing the exact opposite. Another requirement, that was the national TV requirement, but she also had a requirement to be on local TV channels at least 6 times per week. So between national TV and local TV, if you live in this area, you see Nancy Mace on TV a lot if her staff is hitting these numbers. And there have been times where it certainly feels like they have been. There's a more recent version of the handbook that the Daily Beast got, and they said it was notable in how much more detailed it got as far as explaining communications rules compared to legislative or constituent-oriented rules. You know, so basically, the Daily Beast was kind of surprised that she had much more details and direction for the communications folks versus what you think should have more direction and have more, goals or whatever it is that she needs them to do, tasks. the people in the legislative or constituent related issues have far less details in communications. Again, just showing the profile, getting the name out there is more important than actually helping anyone. So some of those staffers said that, yeah, not just the communications thing, not only is that not realistic for the most part, I'm sure they've hit it a few times, but they also said there's other unrealistic expectations, such as filing 25 new bills per year, passing 10 bills out of the floor of the House annually, and getting one bill signed into law annually. So basically just putting it on her staff like, hey, come up with as much as we can so we can just throw it out there. Out of the 62 bills that Mace has introduced since 2021, only one ultimately became law. And that amazing piece of legislation was the renaming of a post office in Hilton Head Island. So yay, she's done so much for us here in Charleston and South Carolina and the country as a whole. So she throws a lot of bills out there. Only one gets passed, but it looks like she's doing a lot of work. It's all optics. More chances for press releases. Nancy Mace has filed a bill for blah, blah, blah. Nancy Mace has filed another bill for blah, blah, blah. Just whatever they can. They just keep pumping that stuff out there so it looks like she's working hard. Her name's out there. Every day, every week. Nancy Mace this, Nancy Mace that. Me talking about her right now, even though it's not a positive light. She doesn't care. Besides the fact I don't have a very big audience, so who gives a crap? But even if I did, she doesn't care. This is raising her profile. But I think it's important for people to know who she really is, and you can make decisions when it's time to vote based on that. Now, to be fair, for most members, it is hard to have a bill become law. So I'm not knocking her for only having one bill passed. It's more the fact that she just wanted to flood the floor with bills with no real interest in them necessarily passing. That's the bigger problem here, because it's not like many members of Congress have multiple bills getting passed into law every year. It's very difficult to do, and sometimes it takes a long time from introduction to actually being passed. So just to put that caveat out there, it's not abnormal for members to only have a bill a year, if that. So just wanted to make sure we covered that. Now, you of course remember I've alluded to it. The whole Scarlet A letter on her shirt about her Kevin McCarthy vote. And at the time, when people asked her about it, she said it was a vote of principle and a vote of conscience based on what she said was, Kevin McCarthy's inability to keep promises. She said that he lied to her about something, or said he'd help with something and didn't, whatever nonsense she came up with. Also said that he didn't keep promises about legislation related to abortion and contraception. And so she said, oh, it's this whole vote of principle thing. And then we talked about her supporting Jim Jordan and how ridiculously problematic that was, considering the accusations involving him in Ohio State University. So where are your principles there? And then we have this new speaker who also has extremely problematic and troubling things in his past, not as far as, legal issues, but as far as his just extreme stances on the LGBTQ community and many other things he said. You can go look it up later. It's not really important at the moment. So we've already been like, look, the whole principle and conscience thing was BS. But her staffers just put like a little exclamation point on that. One of the former staffers said that she saw the votes on the board and said, quote, fuck it, I'm just going to vote for it so I can go on TV and talk about it, end quote. That's not a vote of conscience. That's not a vote of principle. That's a vote of how can I get on TV? Oh, you know what? It looks like if I do this, I'm going to get on TV more. So I'm going to do that vote. And it worked because what was it? 6, 8, 5? I forget the exact number of Republicans who actually voted to oust McCarthy. And they were constantly being asked why they did it. And she hit her goal of being on TV and being interviewed as much as possible. Now, another person they interviewed was a House Democrat. I'm sorry, a House Democratic aide, so not actually a politician, but an aide. And aides work together in different offices. They talk to each other. But yes, this is a Democratic aide, so just keep that in your mind. You know how the when it comes to politics, how the two sides can be. But they claimed that they knew that Mace allocated over 1/3 of her office's annual budget, which is about $500,000, for marketing. So, of that $500,000, she earmarked a third of it just for marketing, which is a phrase that the Daily Beast points out is not something you really hear in politics or in members of Congress, because you're not marketing. You're supposed to be legislating. You're supposed to be doing things. Yes, there's campaigning, which is sort of marketing yourself, but you don't earmark that much money yearly for campaigning, because your campaign isn't every single year. I know how politics is and it feels like it never ends. And yeah, they're kind of campaigning all the time. I totally get that. But that's not what this is. This isn't campaigning. Hey, reelect me in X amount of years. This is all the stuff we've talked about, trying to get her on TV, trying to get her name out there. Marketing could be purchasing advertisements on social media platforms or boosting posts so they get seen by more people, things like that. So, again, just another example of everything we've been talking about. And one aide said, and I think this kind of just sums it up, quote, "She talks about principles and standing up for people, but at the end of the day, all she cares about is maintaining her weird C-list celebrity status by any means necessary," end quote. I think that right there just buttons it up perfectly. Although I think calling her a C-list celebrity is generous. She's probably further down the list than that. Uh, even from her state house races and, as she's made her way to being a representative, in the House on the federal level, she's always touting how she was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, leaving out key details such as, well, she wasn't the first one to enroll there, but many, any previous women left mostly because of harassment and the treatment they had. And also, I think an even more important detail, that she got in, and her dad has a very high up role at the Citadel at the time. Um, Specifically, he had like a really long running term as what's called the commandant of cadets, the longest serving commandant of cadets in the history of the Citadel. So, I mean, was there some, who knows? Look, it'd be speculation, but I think that's an important detail. That her dad was pretty high up and well respected in the Citadel's community, and then she becomes the first female to graduate. Not saying she didn't work hard, not saying she didn't do what was necessary, schoolwork wise or anything like that, but it's a pretty important detail. She was constantly touting that. She wrote a book about it. Her wanting attention isn't new. This is extreme. Writing a book about an experience, which, again, in all fairness, that is an interesting story. To be the first woman to graduate from the Citadel or with any school, that's an interesting story. But it just shows that she was never one to let an opportunity pass her by when it comes to putting her name and profile out there. And it's gotten worse and worse as she's moved up in politics. Now at the national level, she's getting more attention nationally than when she was, on the state level. And it's just like created this media monster, or she likes to call it National Nancy, where she's just obsessed with her name being in the news, her name being out there, being talked about in any way, shape, or form. And the amount of money she's putting towards it, the amount of time she put towards writing these like guidebooks and whatnot that apparently are more detailed than the ones for the legislative side or the people who help her constituents. I mean, this article shows, again, what we've already known about her. If anybody has paid even a tiny little bit of attention to her over the last few years, none of this is new. None of this is shocking. But hopefully people on the national level will see this. So if she starts to think about running for an even higher office than she's in now, whether it's the Senate, or more importantly, if she becomes like a VP pick, although that all seems to be possibly a bunch of BS, people will know the true person. She is not interested in helping constituents. She is not interested in passing legislation. She'll do those things or delegate it to a campaign staff member to do those things. But she's far more interested in herself and raising her own profile. Can a TV network please just offer her a job? Offer her some primetime spot. That's what she wants. Just give her what she wants, get her out of politics, and we can get somebody in office who actually wants to help constituents and actually pass legislation or attempt to pass legislation. Not like, hey, campaign staff, give me 25 bills to just throw out there and, whatever. Then I can throw out a press release, one of my required one per day, to say I introduced something that has no shot of being passed. And I'm not even saying this because I'm trying to get like a Democrat in that role. I don't care. If whoever our representative is, I want someone, even if I disagree with them on certain policy issues, if they are actually trying to legislate and actually trying to help the community and not trying to go viral and get as many TV hits as possible, that is a massive improvement over Nancy Mace. So this isn't even like a weird way for me to be like, so by the way, go vote for. No, I don't care. I want a representative, regardless of party, who does what they are supposed to do and cares about more than themselves. Politicians obviously need to have a certain profile to get reelected. If they have, and they're people too, they have goals. They don't want to necessarily stay in one role. Some are fine with it, and that's great. Others are eyeing higher seats, higher jobs, just like anybody else. So that's okay. I get all that. But the extremes that she goes to, and seemingly at the detriment of her real job, is the biggest problem. And like I said, her aide summed it up the best, just saying she doesn't really have principles. She's not really trying to stand up for the people. At the end of the day, when push comes to shove, she's always going to choose her weird C-list celebrity status over anything else. Moving on, an update to another story. We've talked about capital punishment a few times, and I'm not going to rehash the whole story. It's been well documented, not just on my podcast, but in the news, about South Carolina trying to get lethal injection drugs and haven't been able to for a long time. Now they passed a SHIELD law, and they were able to get some. But there is a challenge that is, to the current law that is going forward. In fact, South Carolina's Supreme Court apparently is not ready to allow the state to restart executions after more than 12 years. They want to hear more arguments about these newly obtained lethal injection drugs, as well as a recently added firing squad. And they also have some questions about the electric chair that has been around since 1912. So the Supreme Court here in the state set a February 6th date for a hearing over a lawsuit that's been brought by 4 death row inmates. It came out of appeals, who they initially are arguing that dying by electrocution or bullets to the heart is cruel and unusual punishment, which of course is not allowed. The justices in February will allow lawyers for the inmates to make some new arguments, including their assertion that pentobarbital, compounded and mixed, has a shelf life of about 45 days. That's one of the lethal injection drugs. They want to know if there is a regular supplier for the drug. There's a SHIELD law, so I'm guessing they won't know who it is, but they just want to know if it's a regular supplier or if it's going to come from different companies. They also want to know what guidelines are in place to make sure that the potency of that drug is right. The attorneys are saying that if it's too weak, inmates may suffer without dying. If it's too strong, the drug molecules can apparently form tiny clumps that would cause intense pain when injected. This is according to the court papers. Lawyers for the state had their own experts at the 2022 trial who argued that death by firing squad of the electric chair is likely to result in instantaneous death, and the inmate would feel no pain. So they're arguing this isn't the case. It'd be quick. They won't feel anything, which seems hard to believe, especially in relation to the electric chair. But okay. So February is when we'll hear arguments and we'll see what the court rules. Will they rule in favor of the death row inmates that, hey, this is cruel and unusual? Or are they going to say, hey, everything's okay to go forward? Or maybe some are cruel and unusual. Maybe they'll say, hey, firing squad, not allowed, but the other two are fine. So who knows what's going to happen? But that's the latest on that battle. So for now, death row inmates are still, on death row, of course, but at the moment, any actual executions are still on pause and will be until at least February when this case goes to court. And lastly, let's have another Murdaugh update. Why not? It's been a little while. Attorneys for convicted murderer Alec Murdaugh are asking South Carolina's highest court to prevent the judge who presided over his murder trial from playing a role in the next phase of his journey through the court system. Lawyers for the disbarred attorney want to block Judge Clifton Newman from hearing Murdaugh's request for a new trial. They also want the state Supreme Court to remove Newman from an upcoming case that is prosecuting Murdaugh over some of his financial crimes. The request, which was made on Wednesday, was part of Murdaugh's appeal of the guilty verdicts and life sentence from his trial last spring. His lawyers, you may remember, have said that a Colleton County clerk of court by the name of Rebecca Hill, they're claiming she tampered with the murdered trial jury by asking jurors their opinion on his guilt or innocence before the trial was over and suggesting to them that she thought he was guilty. And they also claim she pressured them to reach a verdict quickly. So they're appealing that. And so they want to make sure that Judge Newman is not part of that either. The defense wants him removed from deciding whether there'll be a full hearing into Hill's actions. And the reason for that is they believe the judge could likely be a witness because of his previous interactions with Hill during that trial. They also said Newman, in several post-trial interviews, indicated that he thought Murdaugh was guilty. So the defense is arguing that obviously this would prevent him from fairly deciding if the murder trial was unfair, since he's been publicly saying he thinks he's guilty. Now, they did stress that they're not suggesting that the judge has acted improperly as he presided over the trial or anything like that. But defense attorneys Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin are arguing that in their motion that Newman is a material witness to Hill's actions in court. As much as I don't like a lot of anything involving Alec Murdaugh, all the stuff they've alleged and said, there's not many things that I think there is any substance to it. But this, to be fair, this does seem to make a little bit of sense. At least the part about not having Newman involved in this hearing, as if there will indeed be a new trial. It makes sense. He could be a material witness, as they stated. Doesn't mean that he is a bad judge. Doesn't mean he's being reprimanded. They're not accusing him of doing anything wrong. They're just saying that, hey, he could be a witness, so he can't really preside over this. And honestly, I think that does make a little bit of sense. I'm sure there could be something I'm missing or not thinking of, but I get it. And why not give them a new judge? One less thing that if things don't go their way in court that they can complain or allege, well, we didn't want this judge and we said that they'd be biased. Well, we can kind of maybe remove that if they put a new judge in. So we'll see what happens there. Of course, I'll update you as news comes out. So that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you have an amazing week. Remember to go to holycitycenter.com/events if you're looking for plans. Also, if you want to help out the podcast, please rate and review it or subscribe to it on whatever platform you're currently listening on. It's a big help. You can also go to patreon.com/holycitycenter to sign up for one of those support tiers, or go to holycitycenter.com/shop where you can pick up some merchandise. Big thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode, as well as a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I'll talk to you all again on Monday. Stay safe and have a fun weekend. And until then, good night and good luck.